Who are the boom bust prospects in the 2026 NFL draft class that teams are going to be 10 toes down, maybe 10 toes down on drafting, but they're going to be worried for their job if they do get him because he might bust, but he also might be, in the league MVP conversation at some point. I'm Cody Carpentier with the Draft Rankings Show, and with me, as always, is my main man, Matty Kiwoom, repping that Pedro Martinez Boston Red Sox hat. I just watched a little Pedro Martinez video from the old Yankees Roger Clemens fiasco from 20-some years ago. But we're here talking about boom bust prospects across all positions in the 2026 NFL draft class. And per our grades, we're on the same grading scale, a 6.5, and that 6.5 to 6.6 kind of like that's where your grade's going to come through as a boom bust prospect, a prospect who produces exciting flashes in college and carries a combination of size, speed, strength, and talent, and has elite player ceiling, but a bust floor due to concerns that may be including character, injury, or lack of development. That is what we classify a boom bust prospect. But Matty Kiwoom, how you doing?
I'm doing good. I mean, there's just a lot happening in the world of sports right now. We got WBC for us baseball heads. And March Madness is about to kick off. Jason Tatum's back for the Boston Celtics, but football just
Dude, you just forgot about it. We got PGA championships next week. Masters is coming. NASCAR.
Well, sure. I mean, I forgot how long you've been down south for. You care about NASCAR. But anyway, the NFL knows how to stay relevant. They got free agency this week. The draft's 5 weeks away, right? I mean, we're getting the countdown is here. 6 weeks away. But yeah, it's crazy times. I love to talk about it. But I got to say, you started the show with a little bit of a lofty expectation here. I don't know if any of these guys on my list I ever have projected as a possible league MVP.
Yeah, so, that was maybe a little tongue in cheek there, maybe.
But yeah, I'm excited to talk some boom bust prospects with you.
Can I just put this out there? Like I've been about 8 toes down in NASCAR this year. I will say that they've good. But I've been watching NASCAR podcasts. I've been watching the races on Sundays. Like it's fulfilling to. I know we always say like it sucks so bad. To every year, I feel like I'm in the same ethos of just like 212 days until football's back. Like summer sucks, spring sucks, and you know what I've done lately is I've been like trying to ingrain myself in. All right, when Thursday rolls around, tap in to the golf tournament that's happening this weekend. As long as it's something worth it. If it's the Edward Jones blow go, Jimmy Conga Open, I'm not going to watch it. But if it's like. If it's the PGA championship, if it's the Players Championship, if it's at Riviera, if it's whatever, you can like
the ones that are worth watching. You can tell by who's attending the event.
I'll be honest. What I did was I went through my calendar, and so I did this for NASCAR and PGA because I wanted to force my hand to like just pay attention, and so I've put in like all of the PGA tournaments that are like 15 million or more in the purse. Right. I put in every single NASCAR race in my schedule. And these suckers go through like October. Every Sunday through October. There's races. And I've been watching the last couple of weeks. And the new next gen car that they got, it's kind of fun. A lot of accidents. A lot of it's fun to watch. And I'm sitting at the edge of my seat. I'm trying to meal prep yesterday. We're like way off track right now. I'm trying to meal prep yesterday. I'm sitting at the end of my seat, just like food all over the counter. She's like, "Are you going to start cooking or what?" And I'm like, "I'm in the middle of it. There's 30 laps left. Let me sit here." 3 accidents happened.
30 laps
30
go?
Race. Huh?
How 30 laps? Like, is that like 30 minutes? Is like a minute a lap?
Well, this is the deal. Here? So yesterday at Phoenix, they tied a course record for cautions, which happened in 2020 and in 2014. They had 12 in each of those races, and they had 12 in this one. 3 happened in the last like 33 laps. So it should take about, a lap is about 50 to 58 seconds.
Okay.
So it should take a little less than 30 minutes, 26 minutes. But there's 3 cautions because there's accidents. Then it slows it way down a little bit. You got the drama. The cool thing, I'll say this, and I'll finish on this, and then I'll have to timestamp the show. But the cool thing I'll say about watching the NASCAR is they have in-car cameras, they have in-car audio. Like last week, the announcers that were up in the booth like tapped into a car and got on the driver's radio and talked to him when they were in a full stop caution. They were like, "How you feeling with 9 laps left?" And he's like, "Feeling pretty good." They're like, "We're picking you," and he's like, "Appreciate it."
Yeah, he's like
in the
focused
moment,
still.
he's
Yeah.
got 290 laps deep. He's got 9 left, and he's like, "Appreciate it, thank you." But it's just like it's a different thing. I for anybody out there looking for some, of course you have basketball, baseball's coming around but your Sundays watching PGA go to a playoff, watching the last 30 laps of a NASCAR race, like I'm trying to ingrain that into my schedule now that we've wasted 6 minutes of this show.
It's fun to get into those weird things. Like after Drive to Survive, I got into F1. I'm still into it, and I got into it and I started rooting for McLaren because their team president, head coach, whatever the hell it's called, it was American. So I was like, of course I want the American guy. And they stunk. And then these last 2 years they've been nasty. So I've been able to like ride the wave. It's fun. I would suggest the same thing. The NASCAR, F1, golf. Find some, kind of on the skirt, some fringe sports to follow. It helps kind of keep you hungry for what's going on instead of always fiending for what's next.
All right. Now, boom bust prospects.
Boom bust prospects. Back to it. Let's get back to it.
People are going to hate this, but my first boom bust prospect, I do not have Ruben Bain graded as like the far and away, top dog. I love Ruben Bain, but I have Ruben Bain graded in the 6.5s. I have him exactly at a 6.58, which is a high 6.5, comparable to Brandon Graham, who was at Michigan, was a longtime Philadelphia Eagle. Mm-hmm. I do have Ruben Bain as a top 10 player in this class. That's not an argument. Like he's my literal 8th player in the class, but it just shows you in that conversation what he is. I do worry a little bit about the length. I think he is good enough in power. Here's the thing. We talked to a bunch of guys at the combine who said the toughest defender that they went against was him, Ruben Bain. 3 said Akeem Mesidor. 5 said Cassius Howell. And Cassius Howell might be another name we bring up here on the show, but these guys are relentless motors. And my worry, I think, a little bit is that at times I thought Mesidor was the better player on the football field. And when you look at the frame that Ruben Bain has at 6'3", 270, I wonder a little bit if he does get stuck a little bit in the NFL as a little bit of a tweener. And the only reason I bring up, I think he ends up in this grade, is because he's not a 6'6", 270 or a 6'3", 245, where it's like a clear, distinct role for him in a defense where if he gets taken in the wrong spot super high and there's nothing around him, I don't have doubts that he can grind through and have a career.
Right.
That's not what I'm going to. What I'm going to is like you come back in 8 years and you're like, how's Ruben Bain doing? And you're like, well, he's got 28 sacks and he's on his 3rd team or 2nd team and he's doing really good. And but he didn't get re-signed by that first team that drafted him. And like, that's where my wonder or my worry comes in, is just literally the tweener thing. And people forget how fast and how really not long ago that conversation was where, Dane Brugler was out tweeting about like, there's a lot of teams that view him as a 3-tech. There's a lot of teams that don't even have first-round grades on him right now. And that was before the playoff, and I know a lot of things can change. Like I said, I have him as a top 10 player and a first-round pick, but we have to remember that was out there just a couple of months ago, and I do have similar worries with a guy his size, even though I love Ruben Bain. I just want to caveat that. I love Ruben Bain.
So the arm lengths being, a concern, is that something he can get by because he is so strong, or do you think at the end of the day it caps his upside? Like I know that's really the definition of a boom bust but for him, I guess the way I could frame this: how high is the boom? How bad's the bust?
I think the bust is that, like I just said, he ends up, in 8 years, you come back, he's got 28 sacks because he's gotten pushed more inside. He hasn't gotten to play on the outside as much because you're going against these longer tackles. and he isn't succeeding because they're more athletic than the ACC, Duke, and Boston College tackles are that he's been going against the last couple of years. I know he's had Maui Noah and Markel Bell in practice, which are Markel Bell is the longest player in the draft,
Right.
but that coupled with like if he does get pushed inside and he's a little bit smaller, like I said, you go through a 4-year contract, and they're like, well, we're not going to pick up your 5th year. He's on a new team. He's still kind of in no man's land. That's the bust. It's not really a bust. It's not like he's going to be out of the league in a week. But the boom is that he wildly succeeds on the outside, has no problem at all with these tackles, no matter how long they are, which is what he showed us in college. He really doesn't struggle with the length thing. Like, it's a number, but
Yeah.
as far as when you watch the tape, like, it's not really a problem he has. And he tightens up a little bit. I mean, he could lose a couple pounds. He's a big rear-ended player. And he ends up being a double-digit sack guy year in and year out. Or he leans out a little bit like a Rashawn Gary did. Who knows what happens with his body. But I think the ceiling is – and we're seeing Rashawn Gary got moved to the Cowboys earlier this week. And, like, there's going to be a role for him. And he didn't – I mean, Rashawn Gary was a first-round pick as well.
Mm-hmm.
And I don't even really know how you'd classify it. Did he boom? Did he bust? Is he just middle of the line? I think he's been middle of the line to boom. But It took him a little bit to get there.
So my guy I'm going to start with is probably the most glaring boom bust on my big board as of right now. If you want to check out the big board, head to playerprofile.com, check out the entire thing. I'm going to go with Blake Miller because the ride of Blake Miller has been wild. I mean, this is a guy that was been pretty touted at Clemson, had a pretty decent year, but went way under the radar because, well, everyone did at Clemson. That was just a disaster season, and it kind of affected everyone's hype coming out of the gates during draft season. But he comes at, goes to Indy, 6'7". He's a little light though, 317 pounds. He's a little bit light, but he's got the measurables, arm length, all that stuff checks out. Good athlete, had a really great showing in Indy. 405 40, one set with the 1.75 10-yard split. A lot of the things checked out. And even though, 317, a little bit light, 32 bench press reps. So, he got over that 30 mark. He's a strong kid, Iron Man. He's had over 50 starts in college. He's been fantastic in that regards. But the reason why he's a boom bust for me is now with the expectation that he could be a fringe first rounder or a first rounder. Now I think you have to put the boom bust kind of label on him. I do have him ranked at that. My grade has him right in that boom bust range that you spoke about. He's in the middle of it. He's not as high end like you have Ruben Bain. He's right in the middle of the 6'5s. For me, 6'5'4". But now with the expectations that he could be a left tackle in the NFL is going to come those matchups. Though it's going to come with those chances at being a bust. So unlike Ruben Bain, there could be a role for him. But at this point, he's going to get a chance. He's probably going to get drafted to be a left tackle. And we've talked about how this class doesn't have your quintessential franchise left tackle, which has left the door open for, Monroe Freeling to skyrocket, Blake Miller to come back to, being a potential first round pick. So for me, Blake Miller's a boom bust prospect.
I love that. That would have been one for me. I was thinking about him. I was thinking about a couple of other tackles, but I couldn't get myself around there with Monroe Freeling. I got a first-round grade on Monroe Freeling, and I just don't see a lot of bust in that profile. I see a lot more the bust side in the Blake Miller profile. So I like giving that one to you. I'm going to go – people are going to hate this one as well. Kenyon Sadiq, one of the bigger names in the sport.
That's
Kenyon Sadiq, 6'03", 245 pounds, 241 pounds. Everyone runs out to this 4.3 speed, but – the names that compare are Vernon Davis, are Evan Ingram, and the projection right now as far as draft capital for Kenyon Sadiq is super high. And we're talking about, is he going to be a, does the door open at, around pick 10, pick 12? His ADP right now sits at pick, where did it just go? Pick 17. Tampa Bay's at pick 15. They are re-signed Cade Otton to a year deal. We've seen Washington at 7 get mocked a little bit. Chiefs at 9, of course, just brought back Kelsey for a year. You have the Rams who are entertaining, trying to get guys like Mike Evans and AJ Brown this offseason, which is maybe that's happened by now in the show. I mean, it hasn't happened
Yeah,
yet when
right.
we've recorded this, but like they're trying to push the chips in. And the question I have with Sadiq is, man, there was a lot of times this year when you saw it and you were like, that's a dude. And then there's a lot of times when it just like this, he disappeared. And in an offense where there was no Evan Stewart this year and they had injuries, and yeah, they had Malik Benson's speed and De'Corian Moore as a breakout as a freshman, and all those running backs, like I expected more from Kenyon Sadiq. And I think that his ceiling could have risen even more. And people have brought up, like, especially in like when you just look at like the weaponry of this class, running back, receiver, tight end, they're like, well, after Jeremiah Love, is he maybe the next best talent? Like, or like, is he maybe better than Carnell Tate and Mekhi Lemon? And I'm like, no, like well, think about how Kyle Pitts was viewed in that class. I'm like,
Right.
no, like that's not where we're at. We just aren't there. Like it could have been there, but it wasn't fulfilled by Sadiq this last year. And I think we've listened to McShay talk. He's got obviously a very close source at Oregon because he got the Dante Moore stuff. He's gotten the Kenyon Sadiq stuff during the season.
Yeah.
And there's just not there's some question marks with the Sadiq stuff in the not as a teammate, but as a learner of the playbook, or as a, like, is he, now this is a cliche show, is he 10 toes down? Like that was a big question during the year.
Does he love the game?
Yeah. Does he love the game? Is his work ethic? That whole, bullshit that was brought up with Teddy McMillan last year. So I just worry about that side coupled with the 6'3", 240. And I know it's the new age tight end. I know he's the epitome of it. And there's a lot of boom here. There's a Brock Bowers boom here as far as upside. But I think the bust floor also exists in that, we got a lot out of Evan Ingram. Evan Ingram had 110 target season and stuff. But Evan Ingram he's in what, year 8 right now, year 9 right now, and he's pretty much not out of the league, but he didn't do anything for Denver this last year. So I think that classifies as a bust. So that's kind of the range I see, and that's why Kenyon Sadiq joins the list. He is my tight end 1.
I agree with the rank, and I agree with the grade, and I also agree with the potential that he has to be a boom and a bust. If OJ Howard, I know they're completely different style players, but if OJ Howard can fall flat, Sadiq can fall flat. I don't need to hear, we get very short-sighted sometimes, and we see the fastest 40 time. Although, what were they doing in Indy? Were they all have rocket packs? This is the most athletic group in the history of football. Anyway, we'll talk about that after. It was crazy. But, yeah, I think it's a good call. My next guy, you talked about one of your favorites in Ruben Bain. I'm going to talk about one of my favorites. That's a boom-bust prospect, Jacob Rodriguez. Absolute ball hawk. Went down to Indy, and he performed pretty well. I think he showed off to be pretty athletic. 4.57. He had the 4.19 shuttle, 6.93 cone drill. But the reason why he's a boom bust is he's still a little bit small to be a thumper at linebacker, and he's a little bit too thick and not as athletic if he's going to play this safety kind of in the box safety type role. But the upside is unquestionable. The kid's a playmaker. He's an absolute ball hawk last year, turnover machine. But he lacks the length, I think, to be a good tackler. You kind of seen it on tape. You've seen it with his tackling grades. They're not really all that strong. So if he's going to go to a team and be more of a traditional Mike inside linebacker, there are some red flags in his prospect profile that makes me a little bit hesitant to see how successful he can be. But if he goes to the right team, right situation, that knows how to utilize this type of ball hawk, this type of player, and kind of not only can utilize it, but can hone it in, because when you watch his highlight reel, when you watch his tape, you see a guy who makes plays, but you see a guy who gets a little bit too eager to make an extra play. A lot of overruns, a lot of running past the defender, a lot of out of place, not where he's supposed to be outcomes. So there's a lot to be excited about. One of my favorite players in this class, but there's a lot to be nervous about. Jacob Rodriguez, for me, is a boom bust on the defensive side of the ball.
There's a couple of names I'd like to bring up, but I only got 2 left. So I'm going to go this direction, and I'm just going to do this, Matty. You might hate this because I'm going to throw it right back to you, but I'm just going to say number 3, Caleb Banks, Florida. If you know, you know.
Yeah, I'm glad you threw it right back to me, because this next guy we're gonna have to talk about. It's his brother plays in the NFL. Bryce Lance. Bryce Lance had a 1,000-yard season on an offense that doesn't throw the ball a ton. Uh, went down to Mobile. Oh, not down to Mobile. Went down to Indy, lit it up. One of the fastest 40s of the wide receiver position. What did he actually come away with? It was 4.34. So
Yeah.
he's a burner, has the right size, but he went to North Dakota State. And anytime you see a guy kind of check all the boxes, good athlete, 6'3", 204, good hand size, all these things, but then you just don't know how it's going to translate, making that big of a jump from North Dakota State to the NFL. So for me, Bryce Lance has to be a boom bust because on one end on the spectrum, he could be better than Christian Watson, second round pick. Guy that also went to North Dakota State, also had a lot of the similarities in terms of the draft process. Or, he could be this year's small school kid that just wasn't able to wasn't able to transfer enough at the NFL level. So because of that, he's really just boom bust for me.
People make fun of you because of the Christian Watson comp, but I think it's like the only comp that can really be made for a guy.
Yeah, it's
like
sometimes it is I get the helmet scouting and blah 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 laziness, but sometimes what are you supposed to do? Come up with something cockamamie because the most obvious choice is the lame one? Like, get out of here.
Well, yeah, I mean, it comes down to the fact that like he, like Christian Watson, ran the 4.3s and did not play against very many explosive athletes, period, in the sport in his time in North Dakota State. He takes these end arounds like it's easy and smooth. They look the same when they're in open field,
Yeah.
taking a 60-yard carry to the house, and they're a little bit raw as overall route runners and as their short area quickness and just like being able to move in those short areas. But then they're super dynamic as far as their output at the college level. So I love that because there's a lot of upside, like we saw out of Christian Watson, and there's the downside, which we didn't see out of Christian Watson until he got hurt. But
Right.
it's a double-edged sword, and we saw the ceiling with Christian Watson. My last one, I'll go with. This is an interesting one. It's kind of off the cuff. I have a couple more I'd like to bring up, but I'm gonna stay away from those ones for now because I feel decent about them. But Maxi Honachor from Arizona State, the tackle, 6'5", 325, good length, good size. This guy has played football for 3 years, basically in his life. Transferred in with his offensive line coach, who basically introduced him to the sport, to Arizona State. And I've comped him to Tyler Smith from Tulsa. This is a guy that I think if you like truth serum to me and said, which guy in here would you not be surprised, but also would be surprised if he ended up being the best offensive lineman in the entire class, I think it'd probably be Honachor. And if you said on the opposite side, which one of these guys that goes in the top 50 could potentially be like what the hell are you thinking? I think Honachor is also part of that because he's just like, it's one of the NFL things where you go for traits, you go for upside, you go for ability and potential of what you see with your eyeballs when you get your eyes on a guy like this. And I think there's a lot of that going on with Honachor. People fell in love with him with the Senior Bowl. I was one of those guys. His footwork is great, but I just have some question marks as far as just like he's getting thrown into it at such a rapid pace in his career, and it's boom, boom, boom. And all of a sudden he's going to be going up next week against Michael Parsons, Myles Garrett.
Right.
And you're like,
right.
Is he going to be ready for this? Could he get – I mean, we saw what Evan Neal, who we all thought was going to be a generational offensive line pick for the Giants, what he did or didn't do in the NFL. And so, and again, if a guy like that can miss, a guy like Honachor can miss as well. But I also see the extreme ceiling out of Honachor as well.
The last guy I'm going to talk about, I don't know if you could completely qualify it as a boom or bust player, but on one token, he's played himself to this range, so you got to give him credit for that. Drew Aller has become a boom or bust prospect on my big board because of the reason he's looked good enough in Indianapolis that I can paint you many different scenarios in which he's the third quarterback to hear his name called. He's a top 40 NFL pick. And with that risk comes great responsibility, and we know the red flags when it comes to Drew Aller, but he also reminded everybody at the Combine of the green flags, of the good things that he can do, the arm talent, the poise. I'm sure he interviews really well. It's a kid who's had a lot of experience. He's been on the field for a long time for Penn State, and he's 6'5", 230 pounds, good arm. He's got himself in the realm now where he could be a top 40, top 45 NFL pick, and with that is going to come a lot of the potential to be good, to be a boom prospect. But it also is now in the realm where if he doesn't perform, he's a bust. He's not a lottery ticket. Kalen Green, that's a lottery ticket. That's not a boom bust guy. That's a lottery ticket because the boom is there, but so many things have to happen. Drew Aller, then maybe not so much. This is a guy that we might be talking about. Is it Fernando Mendoza or Drew Aller? If Aller had a good season, if things went a lot better for him in 2025 and for Penn State. So for me, Drew Aller is a guy that he was at the top of the QB rankings, fell completely off of the QB rankings, and is now back right there in that range, that boom bust range.
I love that. I love that you wedged in a little Drew Aller because, I mean, that's, I think, combined one of our favorite sleeper conversations at the quarterback position is Drew Aller from Penn State. All right. We appreciate y'all. We love y'all. Tap in, lock in every single night, 7 p.m. Eastern time here on the YouTube channel. I'm trying to multitask at the same time as converse, which is not always the easiest thing, especially when we got all these free agent signings happening.
It's crazy.
Lock in, tap in. Mock drafts coming this week. Matty's is up at playerprofiler.com with some edits in it. Mine probably be up in a week and a half. We got big board updates coming from both Player Profiler and from rosterwatch.com. Everything all the time. We're a little over 6.5 weeks out from the NFL draft in Pittsburgh, PA.